Hello and welcome. So, this is week 12 of The Artist's Way. We made it 3 months. We have met every week for 3 months to do a chapter in this book, and I am delighted to be done with it. I'd love to know your feelings about it. So, if you're watching live, feel free to pop into the chat and let me know how you're feeling after 12 weeks of The Artist's Way. Did you read the book? Did you not read the book? Are you just here to hang out, and all that kind of stuff. Now, before I forget, I did want to mention that the next book club won't be until July. It'll be on July 12th at 12:15 this time. And the book is Expressive Sketchbooks by Helen Wells. So I'll mention that again at the end of the video in case you missed it, and I'll put the link in the description. But now that we're here, let's go ahead and cover week 12 and then a sort of a wrap up of the book. So let me just go ahead and say, hey, Sophia. Hey, Tamari. Nice to see you. Here we go.
Final countdown. It's week 12, recovering a sense of faith. So this bothers me. It says, it is the inner commitment to be true to ourselves and follow our dreams that triggers the support of the universe. While we are ambivalent, the universe will seem to us also to be ambivalent and erratic. The flow through our lives will be characterized by spurts of abundance and long spells of drought when our supply dwindles to a mere trickle. If we look at the times when the world seemed to be a capricious and untrustworthy place, we see that we were ourselves ambivalent and conflicted in our goals and behaviors. Once we trigger an internal yes by affirming our trust, goals, and desires, the universe mirrors that yes and expands us. This to me is the kind of crap that people say when they're like, you have to have faith, and it's your lack of faith that's causing, all these problems. Well, it's like, how do you explain cancer? How do you explain all sorts of things? Like, things happen to people. It's not their fault. And I don't think it's abnormal when things are bad to have doubts. Somebody who wholeheartedly believes in something, even when things are showing you that it's not the way, that it's not right, is a psychopath. A psychopath. An absolute and complete psychopath. If you'd like to know where I am at with The Artist's Way right now, I literally cannot find the book or my Morning Pages notebook, so I'd say I'm pretty done. So I just got a mani-pedi, which I think is a just like super big self-care treat kind of thing. Went by myself. It's an hour and a half. Is that an artist date? Like, does an artist date have to be something creative or potentially creative or mentally stimulating, or can I just be like treating yourself nicely? What is an artist date? I guess it again gets back to like, what's the point of an artist date? So this week's God jar, which is an exercise this week, you're supposed to get a jar, a box, a vase, a container, something to put your fears, your resentments, your hopes, your dreams, your worries into. And then when you're worried, remind yourself that it's in the jar, aka God's got it. And then sort of keep going. And I think that it must be enormously comforting to believe that someone else is in charge of whatever your problems are, your fears are. But I can say from personal experience, I've obviously never met God. Doubt that I ever will, but if I do, I hope he'll be nice. I hope she'll be nice. I don't know. I hope it'll be nice. But anyway, when there's a problem or an issue, it doesn't help me to put it in a jar and to think that somebody else is dealing with it. What helps me is to deal with it, to tackle the problem, to develop a plan, to think about it, to say, okay, I've got a medical problem. Let's figure out where I'm going to get care, how I'm going to pay for it, what this is going to happen. Okay, I've got a, embarrassing, cringy, terrible moment. I've got an angry customer. I've got a, my child's hurt, like whatever it is. Sometimes you can't solve problems, but you can at least, I think it's enormously healing, go through the steps of dealing with it. I think when you put things in a jar, I think that's terrible advice. I think that's about like just locking it away, and then it becomes a proverbial can of worms. I mean, isn't that why people go to therapy? Because they've stuffed everything down for so long that suddenly there's a leak and you just need to let it out. Anyway, just my 2 cents. Okay, so for the rest of it, how many days this week did you do your morning pages? Have you accepted them yet as a permanent spiritual practice? How was the experience for you? So no, I notebooked at least 3 or 4 times this week. None of them were what would be considered morning pages, but I notebooked. And they're not spiritual for me, they're practical. Did you do your artist date this week? Will you allow yourself these on a permanent basis as well? What did you do? How did it feel? I'm going to count the mani-pedi as an artist date. I relaxed. I thought about things. I chilled out. I watched some Food Network on the TV that was playing in the nail salon. It was lovely, and I think a little self-care every week is probably a good idea. As they say, all work and no play makes Julia a grumpy girl, right? Did you experience any synchronicity this week? I'm still searching for what synchronicity is. I did randomly run into my stepmother one day after dinner, which was a moment of like, oh, hi, you know what I mean? Is that synchronicity? I don't know. Okay, and then were there any other issues this week that you consider significant for your recovery? I have not, but this is the last paragraph of chapter 12. It says, as a recovering creative, you now have put many hours into your recovery over these 3 months. Can you believe it's been that long? Changing rapidly as you grew. For your recovery to continue, you require a commitment to further creative plans. The contract on the following page will help you accomplish them. And here is the creativity contract. So I'm currently deep in the appendix stuff in the book, and I have to tell you, I find it really interesting. The original title of the book was originally Healing the Artist Within, and then it became The Artist's Way. But I really think Healing the Artist Within is a much more appropriate name for what the book is. And I think that if I had known that that was the title from the beginning, I wouldn't have had expectations that I had from the title being The Artist's Way, because I assumed it was kind of for everyone. But when it says Healing the Artist Within, it's very clear to me who it's for, and I'm not that person. Okay, so I've just written the blog post that will accompany this video on my blog, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sort of takeaways from the book. So like if you didn't want to read the book, these are the 9 things that I would say is in it. So feel free to jump in and tell me whether or not you agree. But morning pages, artist dates, and then I also listed creative rituals. In general, I felt like there were a lot of things that Julia Cameron talked about that were creative rituals. Creative recovery. I feel like that's actually what the book is about in a lot of ways, is like, it's a book about, I mean, that's the tenet, that's the cornerstone, right, of the book. Limiting beliefs, that's all that stuff about like, you're not an artist, or artists are full of dirty gibbets, that kind of stuff. Regular reflection, I think, as you'll recall, this is the point where I actually got re-interested in morning pages and re-interested in everything else, because for me, reflection, the analysis, like that kind of practical stuff, I'm practical. I liked that a lot. The inner artist child is a huge part of the book, and nurturing the inner artist child, which I really take to mean something about like being playful and remembering. I mean, it's that old joke, right, where an art teacher says to their child, who asks them, what do you do for a living? And they say, well, I teach people how to make art. And the child looks confused and says, well, do they forget? Yeah, because the idea is like we grow up and we forget how to make art, right? So anyway, and then there's lots of stuff about like boundaries and accountability, and I kind of lump those two together, because for me it's like the boundaries are the thing where you say no to other people, and the accountability though is you still need like other people to keep you accountable. I think that's what the whole contract is at the back of the book, the contract, which I like hate with all of the passion in my body. I mean, the thing about the contract in the back of the book is that it's like you agree to do Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way exactly as it is for the rest of your life. Instead of being like, okay, well, now they've learned a methodology, because this is like one way of doing it, not the way, right? We're not all Mandalorians. Can you like think of what you would like to do and develop a plan for that? I don't know. It's a little too much like do it exactly as I tell you for me. And then the last thing, I debated about whether to put this on the list or not, but like it is a tenet of the book, which is trusting God. And so I just wrote a little bit about how I think that this book requires you to, or wants you to make a leap of faith into saying that like God is taking care of you, so you don't have to worry about stuff, or a higher power or whatever, which is, I think that's something that AA does, but I do not. Anyway, so those are that's like my wrap up, my big thoughts. The other thing, which didn't make the list but did make the blog post, is of course it's a buffet. It's a buffet. Eat what you want, leave the rest. So this concludes my wrap up of The Artist's Way. I do not think I would recommend it to anybody who I know. I would certainly, talk about it as like an important work, seminal, piece, something that has influenced a lot of people. But I don't think I would be able to say to somebody like, you need this book. It would have to be a very specific person who like I knew what they were going through. And do you ever know what somebody's going through? Probably not. I don't know. Would you recommend this book? Let's talk about it.
So yeah, let's talk about it. Like now that we're here, now that we have done it, we've been through the 12 weeks, we've participated or not participated or done whatever you've done with it. Like that's the big question I have. If somebody said to you, like, would you recommend The Artist's Way? Would you say, yes, I would? No, I wouldn't. Is there a specific kind of person you'd recommend it to? Like who, I think there are people out there, obviously, I know there are like literally millions of people who can be changed and touched and all that stuff by this book. So who are they? Let's talk a little bit about that. And also, my biggest takeaway this week was reading in the appendix of the book about the original title of the book. It makes so much sense to be called Healing the Artist Within. 100%. I'd be like, oh, actually, I think if that's the title, this is a fantastic book. This is like, if you are the person, this book is titled Healing the Artist Within, I say this book fulfills what it set out to do. It absolutely is about healing the artist within. I think there are a lot of different like tools and stuff that are given in this book, and that's great. My problem really is with it being called The Artist's Way and a spiritual path to higher creativity. My assumption was never that I was damaged coming into it or that you needed to be. And I think that's where I'm like kind of having trouble getting into it. Anyway, let's hit through the comments and see what you guys had to say. By the way, Tamara says that she already has the book. If you came in late and you missed it, the next book club is on July 12th, and it's going to be Expressive Sketchbooks by Helen Wells. So I hope to see you all back in July for that. Sherry says that she did read the book. She's glad that it's done, and she loves doing this book club. I also have loved doing book club. It has absolutely kept me going. I've said this before. I would have checked the book if not for it. And I do have a little bit of burnout from this. I don't know if anybody else is feeling this. I actually think that one of the reasons my 100-day project has completely fallen down is because it was just too hard to do like a 100-day project and do this every day and like whatever else. And it was like, that was like a lot of stuff. Like, I think this requires a certain level of dedication. Technically, Julia Cameron says you're supposed to spend between an hour to 2 hours every single day for 3 months, with this book. And that's a lot. I didn't do that, by the way, but Sophia's giggling that the book is buried somewhere. And it took me a while actually to find it. It took me about 2 days to figure out where it was. And I really looked. Sherry says, I think you've really needed and enjoyed your artist states. And that's so true. I really, I have like a mental note to myself, like, don't lose the artist states. If there's one habit that I'm going to take out of this book, I really want it to be that every week I have to do self-care. It's so easy for a week to fly by and to not think about like filling your own cup. Okay, this is terrible, but I have loved this metaphor from Avatar, the original Avatar movie, for years and years and years, where the Na'vi people basically say like that, the earth people can't be taught, because you can't teach somebody who has a full cup. Like, they come and they want to be the people who know everything, as opposed to like listening and taking in what the Navi say. And the guy who's the main character basically says that he has an empty cup and he's waiting to be filled. And so I've thought of that metaphor and used that metaphor a lot in terms of learning. Like, if you go to class and you feel like, well, I already know everything about gelatin printing, then it's very hard for me to teach you anything about gelatin printing, because you're not listening for the 1%, for the nuances, for the little things, for the things that might change you and make you better, right? You're just about like proving that you do know everything. And so I think there's a lot of stuff about the artist state that's about being that empty blank slate, about filling your cup, about coming empty and looking for something to fill you, instead of just being like, this is a waste of my time. You know what I mean? So I'm going to keep that up. That's my personal mantra. So Sophia, I think, is talking about the God jar here. She says, as a concept that only works for anxieties that are overwhelming someone in a hugely negative way about things they have no control over, and also if they have faith. If none of those things apply, then it's not helpful in the least. And I totally agree. If you have some kind of overwhelming anxiety, it can be helpful to temporarily just put it aside and feel like you don't have to deal with it. That's the old head in the sand. And Lord knows I'm guilty of doing that. But I do really feel like there comes a time when you do need to eventually like handle it, deal with it, confront it. Otherwise, it's like it haunts you, right? Carol says, I read the book, did most of the exercises, not the God jar. Good for you, Carol. Morning pages, notebooking done sporadically. Wouldn't have finished the book without this group, but picked up some good ideas. That's awesome. Carol, I'd love it if you would share some of the ideas that you picked up. Sherry says that she would recommend the book to a special person, and she wonders why they changed the title. So, I mean, I don't actually know, but like from what I read in here, it seems like she tried to get it published under that title and nobody was interested. And so this title was a better title. And probably, I'm guessing it's because either, and this is complete guessing, I have no knowledge, but I'm guessing that the other title was very self-help, and maybe self-help wasn't a big category at the time. Maybe. And so this is more appealing title to like a larger audience, whereas Healing the Inner Artist is like definitely a specific thing where you have to admit you're wounded in order to pick it up, and that limits the audience. Just a guess. You have mentioned your notebooking or morning pages practice. Could you explain your actual plan? How many notebooks, one main notebook, or several according to function? I like the way you analyze. So I have several notebooks in my studio at any time. I have a studio notebook where I keep a lot of notes and sketches. I have an art journal, which counts as a notebook. I have a bullet journal where I keep lists of ideas and stuff. And I have my morning pages book here, which I've been taking notes in and doing stuff like that. And most of the notes in here are about the artist's way, because obviously that's what I was using it for, along with just some general blah, blah, blah sort of diary stuff. I would say for me, each notebook has a practical purpose. I don't really the morning pages for me, I see the practical purpose. I understand it, but I didn't enjoy it. Whereas I really enjoy using my bullet journal, which I think of as like organizing my day, organizing my thoughts, organizing my plans, right? So that feels good and nice to me to be in there. I really like doing my art journal, which sometimes has the capacity to be a diary, but often is just more of a visual tool where it's like, I feel red and green and I feel scrapey and I feel, do you know what I mean? It's like a way of flowing through things, much in the way I think the morning pages are, but visually for me, I think I'm a visual person. And then my studio notebook is really a place where I'm keeping track of what's going on in the art studio, what my plans are sort of artistically. I'm practicing different techniques. I'm trying out different tools. Like that is my main sort of like reference source, I would say. And so I sort of hop around and mix them up depending on what the needs are. I think I actually read a lot of stuff recently about the worst advice that an artist can get is to draw every day. And the question is like, why is this terrible advice? Because if you draw every day, you will get better at it. But if you draw every day as a fetish, meaning like You can't go to bed unless you've done it. It becomes like a thing where you have to show up and show everybody that you've drawn every day. Drawing becomes something that actually then starts to feel like work. It starts to feel like a job. It's not joyful. It loses its interest. So it's like, it's trying to find that sweet spot where you're not being like, lazy is the wrong word, but you're not shying away from doing difficult things. So you are forcing yourself through something. Like, I feel like this is a difficult thing that I forced myself through, right? But at the same time, sometimes when you do that, then it becomes like work, and then you don't want to do it. And then it kind of ruins the experience for you. Do you know what I mean? And so I think the reason I don't say like every day I do my art journal, every day I do my sketchbook, every day I do my whatever, is because that just is impractical for me. I need breaks. I need to hop around. I use the tools for when they're useful to me, and I don't when I don't. I actually read something that somebody said where they do morning pages when they need them. And I thought that was a great way of thinking about them, that morning pages are now a tool you have. Like, maybe when you have those sort of God jar moments where things are overwhelming, maybe you don't just like put a thought into a jar, but you vomit it into your morning pages and just like process it that way until like you feel good enough to let go of doing the morning pages practice. So again, like, I think there are great things to take out of it, and you can definitely find a way to make it work. But for me, I need specific things that I can kind of jump from. I think it's one of the reasons I like to make lots of different kinds of art. Like, I go into a printmaking phase, then I'm in a painting phase, then I'm in a drawing phase, then I'm in an art journaling phase, then maybe I'm in a graphic design phase where I'm doing a lot of work in Illustrator to like design stencils and stuff. I'm a phase person, and that works for me for my creativity. And again, I would say this all comes down to like, we all have to find our own way. I can always give my students guideposts, ideas, places to start, share the way that I see the world, but I can't actually tell anybody how their path is going to work, because I don't actually know what's going on in their life, in their mind, in the way they think, in their, home, in their studio, like whatever it is. That was a really long answer to a short question. Donna says, sadly, I didn't finish the appendix. Had I, it might have made sense. Maybe the title change should have been in the foreword, not a plot twist at the end. Aha. Well, interestingly, it's so in the back of so first of all, I have a copy that is the 30th anniversary edition. And in the back, there are two intros. One is to, like, I guess it was maybe 10 years after it came out, and one is 25 years after it came out, because they reprint the book every time with a new foreword. And apparently there are some copies of The Artist's Way that have things about like putting on a record and stuff like that they've sort of edited out over time to try to update it. But anyway, it was in the foreword, I think, to the 25th anniversary edition that they mentioned the name difference, which is what I think is interesting. Sherry says, yes, burnout is what I hit last week. 100%. 100%. Donna says the concept of the artist dates and some kind of journal morning pages are noteworthy takeaways. Yeah, I think that those are the two things. When you mention The Artist's Way, whether people have read it or not, the thing they almost always say is morning pages and artist date. And if you think about it, the question is why? And I think there's two reasons, which is you don't need to be in recovery to benefit from morning pages or from the artist date, right? So that means that it's not that small subset of people, right, who are in recovery, but it's sort of everyone. Like, I think athletes would probably, benefit from morning pages and an artist date. Doctors would probably benefit from morning pages and an artist date. Like, I can think of very few people who wouldn't benefit in some way, right, from doing some version of morning pages and some version of self-care or an artist date, right? I think that's when they put the lid on the cup. Yes. Everything is a learning experience if you only learn what you don't like. That is 100% true. I do have to say I'll miss this book club. Well, we'll be back in July with a new book. And Donna says, in reference to the 100-Day Project, somewhat like your discussion about drawing every day in a fetish sort of way, hey, if it doesn't feel good like a pressure, skip it. Yes. 100%. I think like there are too many obligations. This is what I would say having a child has taught me. You just have to let things go. You can't do everything. You can't actually be superwoman. You can't, like, at the end of the day, the thing is that is the most important to me is like being with my kid, making sure he's okay. And if it's the choice between, like, him being happy and doing something and like me dealing with customer emails or trying to get the 100-day project done or whatever, I'm going to choose him. And that's a personal choice for me at my point in life. But like that, I feel it. I know it. It's not even a question. And so I would say in the past 3 years, I've let a lot of stuff just sort of slide and go because I don't have the bandwidth to deal with it. And I'm okay with that. And I think I wrote a newsletter last week that was about quitting. And I think it's just been on my mind that sometimes quitting is self-care. It's not like being a loser or being, terrible or dropping anything. It's just about the fact that you sometimes need to let things go, right? Carol says that she agrees with Donna. Artist dates and some kind of journaling are the best takeaways. Yeah, I agree too. And I think they're the most, if I may, practical takeaways, because after all, I'm a practical person. So I want to thank you guys again so much for joining me for this 12-week journey. I will see you in 2 months, for a month and a half, really, for the next book club on July 12th, where we'll be talking about Expressive Sketchbooks by Helen Wells. That gives everybody plenty of time to get the book, run through some of the exercises, fill a sketchbook, a different kind of morning pages if you really think about it. And I'm looking forward to that. So I will say thank you so much, and I'll see you in July. Oh, and if you want to get my newsletter where I talk about quitting and everything else, it's totally free and you can sign up. There's a link usually in my bio or down in the description where you can see it. And I'd love to have you there. So talk to you later. Bye.